January 1st, 1978, Mile High Stadium. The Oakland Raiders walked in as defending Super Bowl champions, expecting to finish off a franchise that had never won a single playoff game. Haven Moses changed that. Craig Morton found Moses streaking behind the Oakland secondary. 74 yards. Touchdown.
Touchdown, Moses! Haven Moses in the end zone!
The stadium shook like the earth itself had shifted. Final score, Denver 20 to Oakland 17. The team that owned the AFC West for a decade just got evicted. From 1970 through 1976, the pattern held without variation. Oakland won the division. Oakland won the big games. Denver watched. The Raiders took 13 of the first 17 meetings after the merger. Ken Stabler ran that offense like a man who already knew the ending. Red Miller arrived in Denver before the 1977 season with a specific message. He told the Broncos directly, "You've been getting your cans kicked for years by the Raiders. My teams have had success against the Raiders." That wasn't a speech, that was a contract. Miller understood something about the Raiders that Denver's previous staffs hadn't grasped, that Oakland's mystique fed on your belief in it. Miller also brought in Craig Morton, a quarterback most of the league had written off. In Denver, he found a defense that could carry him. Lyle Alzado anchored the Orange Crush unit with ferocity beyond technique. When Alzado recalled hearing, "Lyle, you are now a Bronco," he described it like a man finding out he belonged somewhere. He said he knew when the ball was coming his way. "I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but I knew they were going to come my way." That wasn't arrogance. That was a man who had turned his need for validation into fuel. On October 16, 1977, Denver hosted Oakland in a regular season meeting. The Broncos won 30-7. The Oakland Raiders arrived at Mile High Stadium on January 1, 1978, as defending Super Bowl champions. John Madden's team was installed as a 10-point favorite. Denver had never won a playoff game. This was supposed to be a coronation, not a contest. Red Miller told his team before kickoff, Denver never had the opportunity to go to the playoffs, much less the Super Bowl. He said it not as a lament, but as a dare. The Broncos played like men who had been waiting 7 years to say something. Morton managed the game with careful precision, while the Orange Crush defense made Stabler work for every yard. Haven Moses caught 2 touchdown passes when the game required it most. He later said, "That game was representative of the entire 1977 season." And then, years removed from the noise, he added, "You can't replicate that." Final score, Denver 20, Oakland 17. The Broncos were going to the Super Bowl. The Raiders were going home. But the victory came with a complication that Oakland would never let go. Late in the game, running back Rob Lytle took a handoff and was met by Oakland safety Jack Tatum in mid-air. Tatum forced the ball loose before Lytle hit the ground. Oakland recovered. The officials, instant replay didn't exist yet, gave the ball back to Denver. The film showed clearly that Lytle had fumbled. Oakland had recovered a live ball and been handed an incompletion instead. Davis would spend years treating that call as evidence of something larger. He had built his franchise on the idea that the league's power structure had always been aligned against him. The Lytle non-fumble became his proof. But the Broncos got demolished in Super Bowl 12, and Oakland bounced back to win Super Bowl 15 just 3 years later. Had Denver's breakthrough actually changed anything? Or were the Raiders still the superior franchise when it counted most? Then came 1982 and a different kind of answer. Alzado had always chased something beyond what Denver could offer. He wanted a ring. In 1982, the Los Angeles Raiders made him an offer. He took it. When Alzado suited up in silver and black against his former team on December 26, 1982, Denver fans felt something unexpected. The rivalry had reached inside their own locker room. Final score, Los Angeles Raiders 27, Denver 10. Alzado played hard. He always played hard. But the image of him in Oakland's colors introduced a question that would echo through this rivalry for decades. If your best players can be lured to the enemy, what does loyalty actually mean in this division? The 1977 AFC Championship changed who the Broncos were. Nearly a decade later, the rivalry found its next wound. The 1986 season opener at Mile High Stadium announced something to anyone paying attention. John Elway and Mark Wilson traded haymakers through 4 quarters. Steve Watson hauled in a 35-yard touchdown from Elway. Marcus Allen answered with a 24-yard catch from Wilson. Todd Christensen caught a 16-yard touchdown pass. The lead changed hands like a hot coal nobody wanted to hold. Final score, Denver 38, Los Angeles 36. 2 points separated them. Week 1, these teams could not play a boring game against each other. Elway later told reporters, "I signed a 5-year deal, but I just don't find myself ever losing that desire to beat the Raiders." The Raiders had that effect on people. Then came Mike Shanahan. He joined the Raiders as head coach in 1988 and made it 4 games into 1989 before Al Davis fired him after a 1-3 start. Shanahan was still only 36 years old, full of ideas about how the Raiders' offense should work, and powerless once Davis decided he was done. Al Davis never fully paid what he owed him. Shanahan left without a ring, without a full paycheck, and without any public platform to respond. Davis had built his franchise identity on answering to no one. He had never considered what happened when the people he dismissed decided to answer back. Al Locasell, one of Davis's closest lieutenants, would later say simply, "I wish we had him now." That sentence contains an entire decade of regret. Before the reckoning came the humiliation that made it necessary. Davis told anyone who would listen before the 1993 playoff game that Denver was scared to death. He had been running that psychological operation for 20 years. In January 1994, the Raiders backed him up with one of the most brutal postseason beatdowns in rivalry history. The Los Angeles Raiders hosted Denver in the wild card round, and what followed was not a football game so much as a verdict. Jeff Hostetler found Tim Brown on a 65-yard strike. The Raiders' defense overwhelmed Elway at every turn. Shannon Sharpe caught a 23-yard touchdown from Elway, but it barely registered against what Oakland was doing to Denver's side of the ball. Final score, Los Angeles 42, Denver 24. Shanahan was watching from somewhere else that day, not yet in Denver, not yet in position to respond, but the score lived in him. Denver hired Shanahan as head coach in January 1995. The Raiders moved back to Oakland that same year. Shanahan had other plans. On September 20th, 1998, the Broncos hosted Oakland early in the season as defending Super Bowl champions. It was not a playoff preview. It was a September game that still carried extra weight because Shanahan was facing the franchise that had fired him 9 years earlier and forced him to rebuild his career from scratch. Denver took control early and never relinquished it. John Elway orchestrated the offense with the calm authority of a man who had already won everything he needed to win and was now simply making a point. Ed McCaffrey caught a 1-yard touchdown pass. Jason Elam's kicking kept the scoreboard moving. Greg Davis hit a 44-yard field goal for Oakland, but the Raiders never seized momentum. Then Eric Turner, an Oakland defender, picked off a pass and returned it 94 yards for a touchdown, a moment that encapsulated how thoroughly the Raiders had lost the thread of this game. Even their best play of the night was a reminder of how far behind they were. Shanahan's defense closed every door the Raiders opened. Final score, Denver 34, Oakland 17. Shanahan walked off that field having gone 6-1 against Oakland since taking the Denver job. The man Davis had fired after 4 games had won 2 Super Bowls and turned the Raiders into a team that could not solve him. Ed Donatel, one of Shanahan's defensive coaches, later reflected, "I think that will always be big in this organization, the rivalry with the Raiders." Davis had fired coaches on instinct, restructured contracts on a whim, and treated the people around him as instruments rather than partners. The Shanahan firing was not unusual by Davis's standards. It was just the one that cost him the most. There was a linebacker on Denver's roster during those Super Bowl runs who knew every Shanahan system. Bill Romanowski had won 2 championships in Denver. When his time with the Broncos ended, he reflected on what drew him to Oakland. "It's like it was meant to be, me and the Raiders, eventually. They make you feel like you belong. It's a team that doesn't look at things like chronological age and just looks to see if you're a football player." Shanahan had turned his humiliation into a decade of dominance. But the Raiders were about to prove that revenge is a two-way street. Romanowski signed with Oakland in 2002. 2 Super Bowl rings earned in Denver. Every blitz package memorized. Davis had purchased Shanahan's playbook in human form. The linebacker who'd spent 4 years perfecting Denver's defensive schemes now sat in Oakland's film room, diagramming them for the other side. Shanahan said nothing publicly. The scoreboard would do the talking. But Romanowski's defection did something Davis hadn't managed in years. It gave Oakland belief. Rich Gannon, a journeyman who'd bounced through Minnesota, Washington, and Kansas City across 11 11 seasons, arrived in Oakland and found a second life. Gannon later told reporters, "I can tell you this, I never took one day of my career in the National Football League for granted." That hunger translated. By 2000, the Raiders won the AFC West for the first time in a decade. September 17, 2000, Network Associates Coliseum. Ed McCaffrey caught a 10-yard touchdown from Brian Greasy. Trevor Price scooped a fumble and rumbled 28 yards for a score. Joe Nedney added a 24-yard field goal, 17-0, before the Raiders knew what happened. Oakland tried to claw back, and Randy Jordan returned a blocked punt to tie the game at 24 before halftime. But Nedney added 3 more field goals. Final score, Denver 33, Oakland 24. Even in Oakland's best season in years, Shanahan still owned them head-to-head. Gannon understood what Davis demanded. Al Davis created an organization that relishes not just winning, but winning at the highest level, Gannon recalled. "When I was here and we'd go 12-4 and we'd win the division, it didn't matter to him. He was only about the one thing. Davis wanted a Super Bowl." By January 2003, Oakland reached Super Bowl 37 against Tampa Bay, the franchise John Gruden had just left to coach. But Tampa Bay shredded Oakland 48-21. The Buccaneers knew every Raiders audible because Gruden had installed them. Davis had been beaten by his own formula, a former coach using insider knowledge against him. The symmetry with Shanahan's story was grotesque. Davis kept making the same mistake, and the league kept making him pay. The franchise cratered overnight. From 2003 to 2009, Oakland went 29-83. 7 seasons, 7 different coordinators. The instability Davis's critics had warned about since the 1980s had finally consumed the entire operation. Gannon saw it coming. "I think the Raiders need to take a deep breath and get back to doing the little things that are successful," he said. "I think we focus so much on the X's and O's and not enough on the little things that don't require a ton of talent." Davis didn't listen. Davis never listened. October 17, 2004, McAfee Coliseum. Jake Plummer found Jeb Putzier for a 12-yard touchdown. Dwayne Carswell added a 10-yard scoring reception. Sebastian Janikowski kicked a 35-yard field goal, Oakland's only score. Final score, Denver 31, Oakland 3. 28 points. At home. The stadium was half empty by the third quarter. Davis told confidants he would not retire until he won 2 more Super Bowls or died. He was 75, and the franchise was rotting from the inside. The man who once declared, "You don't adjust, you just dominate," now presided over a team that couldn't compete with practice squads. September 27, 2009, Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. Another autumn Sunday, another blowout. Final score, Denver 23, Oakland 3. 3 points, again. The rivalry had become a scheduled win for Denver. From 1995 through that Sunday in 2009, Shanahan and his successors had gone 22-7 against Oakland. The hatred still burned in the stands. The black hole still jeered every Broncos jersey, but the games themselves had lost their teeth. Davis, now in his 80s, rarely appeared in public. The owner who'd shaped the AFL, who'd terrorized commissioners and coaches and rival franchises for 4 decades, spent his final years watching his empire dissolve from a luxury box. Michael Huff had been drafted in 2006, part of a string of first-round picks that produced almost nothing. The Raiders kept swinging, they kept missing. For a decade, this rivalry was a mercy killing. But what happened next would make the old Raiders-Broncos wars look like a warm-up. Al Davis died on October 8, 2011. He was 82 years old. The man who had waged war against commissioners, coaches, and the entire city of Denver for half a century left behind a franchise that had won 4 games the previous season. His son Mark inherited a team with no quarterback, no plan, and no identity beyond the silver and black. Former employees described the younger Davis as someone who could be both odd and indignant, a man still learning to fill a chair that had been occupied by the same person since 1963. But here's the thing about Davis's death. It didn't kill the rivalry. It stripped it to its bones. Rewind 1 year. October 24, 2010. Invesco Field at Mile High. Denver entered the game at 2-4, stumbling through a season that would end at 4-12. Oakland was barely better. 2 irrelevant teams playing out the string in mid-October, the kind of game networks bury in the early window. Oakland treated it like a Super Bowl. Jason Campbell, a quarterback nobody confused with greatness, threw a 43-yard touchdown to Zach Miller on the game's first drive. The ball left Campbell's hand with a clean spiral, and Miller ran untouched through a secondary that had already quit. Chris Johnson intercepted a pass and returned it 30 yards for another score. Darren McFadden, whose legs could make defenders look like they were running through sand, punched in a 4-yard touchdown. By halftime, Oakland led 38-7. The Raiders kept scoring. Denver kept folding. Al Davis, watching from a suite, had once told reporters before a playoff game that Denver was scared to death of us. On this afternoon, he looked prophetic. Final score, Oakland 59, Denver 14. 59 points, the most lopsided result in the history of a rivalry that stretched back to 1960. A decade of humiliation, 7 coordinators, an owner who refused to adapt, compressed into one cathartic afternoon. When Peyton Manning later heard about the score, he texted a team official, "Is this a hoax?" He saw it online, saw nothing after the game, could not believe it was real. Manning wasn't even on either roster yet. The blowout had traveled beyond the rivalry and into league-wide disbelief. But that afternoon didn't fix anything. Oakland finished 8-8. Davis died 13 months later, and the man who couldn't believe the 59-14 score, he signed with Denver. Manning arrived in March 2012, his neck surgically repaired, his arm an open question. He chose the Broncos over several suitors and immediately transformed the franchise. Denver went 13-3 in his first season. The Raiders, meanwhile, went 4-12. Manning didn't just beat Oakland, he made the games feel like exhibitions. The quarterback who texted, "Is this a hoax?" about Oakland's blowout now delivered his own version of cruelty, methodical and clinical, where Oakland's had been wild. Oakland's response came in the form of 2 players who arrived within a year of each other. Derek Carr, a second-round pick in 2014, had grown up watching his older brother David get destroyed behind Houston's offensive line. Derek carried that scar tissue differently. He smiled through press conferences, led Bible studies with teammates, and threw with a release so quick it looked like the ball left his hand before the play started. Khalil Mack, drafted 5th overall the same year, operated on the opposite frequency. Mack said almost nothing. He let his hands do the communicating, and they spoke in a language offensive tackles couldn't decipher. By 2016, those two had built something Oakland hadn't seen since Gannon's prime. November 6th, Oakland, Alameda County Coliseum. Denver arrived as defending Super Bowl champions. Sebastian Janikowski opened with field goals of 24 and 29 yards. Latavius Murray bulldozed in from 1 yard out. The Coliseum shook in a way it hadn't in 14 years. Carr orchestrated the offense with the calm of a man who'd been waiting his entire life for this moment. Final score, Oakland 30, Denver 20. The Raiders finished 12-4, their first 12-win season since 2000. Carr broke his leg in Week 16. Oakland lost in the wild card round. Mack was traded to Chicago in 2018. The window didn't close, it shattered. Then the franchise left. Mark Davis moved the Raiders to Las Vegas in 2020. The black hole, the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, 50 years of tailgates and face paint and generational loyalty, gone. Derek Carr later said on his podcast that the move changed something fundamental about the team's identity. A franchise born in rebellion now played in a tourist destination. The skull and crossbones flew over a city that hadn't earned them. The rivalry with Denver didn't cool. Marcel Reese, the former Raiders fullback, said what every Las Vegas Raiders fan was thinking about the Denver Broncos during the 2025 NFL season. That the hatred had survived the geography. The uniforms hadn't changed. The division hadn't changed. And when Denver drafted Bo Nix in 2024 and handed him the starting job, the Broncos found something they'd lacked since Manning left. A quarterback who could grow into the rivalry rather than just pass through it. November 6, 2025, in Power Field at Mile High. Nix found Troy Franklin for a 7-yard touchdown. Will Lutz added a 32-yard field goal. Las Vegas managed a single score. Ashton Jeanty's 4-yard rush. The Raiders' offense produced nothing else worth remembering. Final score, Denver 10, Las Vegas 7. Denver swept Las Vegas to close the 2025 season. The Broncos won the division. The Raiders finished searching for answers. Nix, now in his second NFL season, played with the patience of someone who understood the job wasn't to win one game against the Raiders, but to win the next 15. After Nix broke his ankle late in the 2025 season, General Manager George Payton told reporters that Nix is tracking to return in May when the Broncos begin organized team activities. A statement that carried the quiet confidence of a franchise that believed it had found its future. Las Vegas had been here before, rock bottom. No quarterback, no clear path forward. Al Davis once insisted before a playoff game that Denver was scared to death of his Raiders. In 2025, fear was not the word, but the rivalry's gravitational pull remained intact. Two franchises bound together by 6 decades of coaching vendettas, player defections, owner grudges, and the stubborn refusal to let the other side rest. The geography changed, the fury didn't. Las Vegas enters 2026 with a clearer answer at quarterback than anyone expected. The Raiders signed Kirk Cousins and hold the first overall pick, with most of the league anticipating they'll use it on Fernando Mendoza. 2 quarterbacks, one franchise trying to find itself in a city that still feels borrowed. But the Raiders have been here before, rebuilding around a quarterback who was supposed to fix everything. Cousins is 37. Mendoza is unproven. The window between promising offseason and another wasted year is narrower than Las Vegas wants to admit. Denver's answer is simpler. Nix is expected to be healthy for organized team activities after Denver activated him off injured reserve and kept his recovery on schedule. Sean Payton, entering his 3rd year in Denver, has a quarterback young enough to anchor the next decade and a roster coming off its second finish above 500 since 2015. The Broncos aren't a finished product, but they know what they're building. The rivalry's gravitational pull remains intact. When the 2026 schedule drops, both fan bases will find the other's name and circle it without thinking. 55 years in the same division, same fury, different zip codes. Can two franchises that made each other ever truly escape what they built together? Probably not. The betrayals are too old, the grudges too deep, the wins too personal. Al Davis is gone, Shanahan is gone, the black hole is gone. But somewhere in Las Vegas, a Raiders fan still knows exactly what Shanahan did. And somewhere in Denver, a Broncos fan still remembers what it felt like before he did it. 2 proud cities, 1 division, and a score to settle in September. If this hit different, subscribe. Help reach 10,000 by July 4th. Every rivalry in NFL history is on the list. The next one might be yours. There's a video on your screen right now. Don't let the algorithm bury it.